Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the show that is Facts with Fact the Madness. My name is Craig. Welcome to the show. See a couple people already there. That is Let's, and we'll let a couple other people come in. And I was a little bit late, so sorry. I was trying to tinker with a couple of different things like look and feel and all those kind of things, but in fact, I don't think I got it the way I wanted it to be. Oh yeah, there we go. And that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to figure out how I could look at this screen that I'm looking at right now and still be able to see this screen right here because I want it to be over there. Oh, I got to turn this down because I can hear me in my headset. Okay. Yes. How are we doing today? Lots of things going on. Some things I did not even know were going on. I don't know whether or not it was because I just wasn't paying attention, but I woke up a little bit earlier today and saw stuff about Trump and the case and the Supreme Court and this and that. So I started kind of looking into it. Fascinating it was, so I thought I'd put it on there and talk about a couple of different things and introduce to some of you all who may or not be aware of a resource tool that I use that I kind of want to let you guys check out too. So I had a few different things that I wanted to put up as well. So I just want to make sure I have those available too. So we'll kind of play it by ear. So first things first, let me do some housekeepings. I've already greeted a couple of you that are here. Anybody who shows up, whether it's one of you or two of you or 9 or 10 or 100 or 1,000, whatever. One day I'll have a number of people I'll be able to talk to. And right now it's just whoever's here or whoever comes across the show and, gets exposed to my thoughts. So I want to definitely say hello to you all and welcome. I do want to take some time just to address a couple of things and just in one way or another, but it has to do with my mods, those people who have wrenches. Now, there was a show previously, obviously, many of you all know how that went down, that I was doing with Generally Specific. We both have decided to go our separate ways, if you will, and I do the show now by myself. I can't remember the first time that I had a live show. Well, when I had that live show, probably one of the first few live shows that I had, I divvied out wrenches. It was just as a function of not really knowing what a wrench did, knowing that you needed to do things, post links and those kind of things. It turns out you see my actual name in the chat. That is me. That's my other account. And I want to see if I could actually post a link myself so that if I didn't have any mods, then I'd be able to do it if I needed to. Turns out that I do have some mods that are here. I appreciate the work that you do. Post the links if there's any information that you think might be pertinent to other people, then put it out there for them to be able to utilize. So again, I am still trying to figure out how I want the show to run, how I do things just on a whim, or planned. If something comes up and I want to present it to you all, then I'll do it. So, but obviously I need to be able to put out information when I need to. Give credit where credit is due. Those kind of things. I think, as it stands, I think I may have had 5 mods in total. Some of them have, stayed, still show support in the background and do all those kind of things. And as they wish, they can be a part of the show or not. So, and I don't know why it is that this particular person may or may not realize that I do this show at 10:10, but they'll just have to wait. So can't take the call. All right, that's that. Let me see, make sure that I addressed everything that I wanted to there. Let's see. All right. Now, as far as that, I just mentioned briefly about how the show is going to be run, and I have been working on. When I say working on, that is um, kind of editing some of my own thoughts with regards to how the show was and how it is and how I want it to be. And that includes some of the best, what do they say, the best of type things. So kind of a best of all the shows that we've had thus far. I think we might have had like 9 or 10 shows prior to the 4 that we've had so far. So I want to give homage to the fact that those existed, kind of editing those things together. And to be honest with you, my thoughts were that I wanted to give um, GS the opportunity, if he wanted um, to be a part of that on the smallest level or the greatest level. And I just didn't really know logistically how I wanted to kind of make that happen. I think that I was kind of moving towards doing it today or maybe even last week, but I thought I'd spend a little bit more time kind of making it be what I wanted to be, and then figure out what it would be. So I'm going to say, just for the sake of putting things out there as a goal or to hold myself accountable to a timeline, that we'll say that we'll have that out between tonight. That is, today is the 2nd of July, 2 days away from the holiday, and next week. So that gives me enough wiggle room to kind of get it done, but it is what it is. So let me make sure I take care of that. And when I say address, I mean, I have a couple of different things that may have been forgotten or have fallen on deaf ears. And I just want to make sure that that there's been a couple of times when Todd was saying a couple of different things with regards to me and him that either I felt was not quite represented correctly, or maybe some things were left out. So I think, between me putting it out there and giving him the opportunity to respond or not respond. I mean, he has a show. I think I saw a show that was like 5 hours long, so he has plenty of time on his hands to be able to take care of doing that. So anyway, let's what's going on. So I was telling a funny story about the pronunciation of your name, and even when I look at it, I still might think of it wrong. But now I have not only a voice behind the name, but you kind of clarify what it is. So thank you for clarifying. Let's OTVO. And now I know what it stands for. So it kind of has that much more meaning to me, which is kind of cool. Has something to do with Terry V, Ohio, right? So good to see you. Thanks for being here, and welcome. All right, next thing. So I don't know what you guys have thought about this whole entire Trump ruling, the Supreme Court's ruling um, on this case. I learned when I was younger, when I lived in Japan, there was a couple of incidents that happened. One that sticks out in my mind. One that, well, first of all, I went to a public school. It was a Japanese school. It was St. Joseph International School. Well, it was just St. Joseph, but it was a Catholic school. My mother put us in private schools. Most of my my elementary and junior high, and then when I was in up until my 9th grade year, we came back to America. Then I went to public schools from there. I don't know why when we came back did she no longer decide that we were going to be in public school. I guess the foundation had kind of been laid. And it's so interesting, when I was in Japan, in the school that I was in, I mean, it was a very difficult situation. So just imagine this. First of all, we woke up at, I mean, if school started at, let's just give it a reasonable amount of time, 8 o'clock. And it might even be a little bit earlier than that, but I'm going to say 8 o'clock just to be kind of on the conservative side. We lived in a place called Yokosuka, on Yokosuka Naval Base. And I went to school in Yokohama. Now, I don't specifically remember how many miles that is. I know if we drove, it probably would take like I would say probably an hour to get there, maybe 45 minutes. Feels like it was like 45 minutes to an hour. But my sister and I rode public transportation in Japan. Now, we had to walk 30 minutes. It took us about 25 to 30 minutes to walk to the gate, and then it's 30 minutes total. So walking from our house to the gate, and then from the gate was literally about another 5, maybe 10 minutes to walk from there to the train station. Then we ride on the train station. It took us an hour to get to Yokohama. And then when we got to the train station, we walked about another 5, maybe 10 minutes to where the buses were. Then we took that bus to where we were, which is another maybe 15, 20 minutes to get to school. Then we'd walk up a hill, and then we would be at school. And my sister's school was even a little bit further than ours. She went to a school called St. Moore's. And we did that till we went to school and then came back. So imagine doing that and then having to do the homework that we had to do, not to mention the fact that my mother was a single parent, even though she was in the Navy. Like, we didn't have all of like the different types of things that I think people had. For example, when we first were introduced to computers, we didn't have a computer at home. The only time that I had to experience doing stuff on the computer was at school. I mean, that didn't come until later, even when I was like, I don't even remember. I'm trying to think when I had the actual first computer at home. I don't think that I had a computer of any type that we could use for school. I don't remember having one. I mean, now, my kids had a cell phone, laptop, all kinds of different devices, and I'm struggling to remember whether or not I know I had like, calculators, those kind of things, but I just specifically do not remember having a computer. But and the reason why I bring that up is because, like, for example, when we had to learn how to type, and just a traditional typewriter with the arm that swung and everything, and J J J J J J J J J L L L, doing like the traditional way of learning how to type. And then after we became proficient in typing, then we learned how to use computers. And I remember it was Apple II. I want to say it was 2C. It was Apple IIc. It was little tiny computers, and they had like enough for all of us to have in our class. And we sit and we learn BASIC. And our teacher taught us how to program in BASIC. And as an example, some of the things that we had to do was we had to learn how to make a program. Have you guys ever heard of the nail and ring, or stake and ring? Anyway, it was a T, and then it had an O, and we had to learn how to make the T, or the O, run away from the T. Anyway, we had to do that program. And then from that program, we had to do the same thing, which was bring a flying saucer across the screen. So if you can imagine the grid of a flying saucer, I wish I could put a picture up. I probably could look. I should have probably already looked. I didn't think I was going to tell this story, but anyway. So we moved this UFO across the screen, and basically it was an equation, and you put this equation in to describe each of the pixels. Then it would race and move and move and move. Now, these guys that were in my class, they had already been I'm so glad that I learned how to type. They had already been working these programs, and like they would come up with these programs, like they would do these cool different things and have a little man come down and walk into a store and come out and have all these dialogue, and then come back up. And I was barely trying to get my flying saucer to go across the screen. In fact, I got probably 3/4 of the way, and then had some kind of error that I didn't resolve before the project was over, and my UFO dissolved. So I think I may have got like a C. But my point, the reason why I bring up the story is because on some level, I struggled when it came to school, particularly when I was in Japan. And not only that it was difficult what I had to do, but I had, to me, so many obstacles, if you will, that made it much more difficult for me to succeed. Now, granted, I had some very, very bright people that I went to school with. I mean, there was this, I mean, first of all, one of my best friends, his name was Thane. He happened to be his great grandfather was a poet laureate. He spoke perfect Japanese. You can look him up. He does things in Japan right now. And there was a couple of other people, and I think on some level we are still in contact with each other. You know, I still know these people. They come across my Facebook feed and those kind of things. But they were some bright people, really bright people. And so being around these people in my mind actually pushed me, despite the fact that I had some other things going on, not having a computer, for instance. And I did struggle in some areas, but it benefited me more than it hurt me. So, and I bring that story up just to say that, and I can't remember why went on that tangent. I apologize, but just to mention some of the difficulties that I had growing up. And I don't even consider that to be the most difficult thing that I've ever experienced. But I know one thing is that I take and learn from the experience of my past that have affected me now and what I look towards the future. That's, you know, as it relates to my race, as it relates to my education, my economic status, those kind of things. All of those things are influenced by not only the fact that I had difficulty in those things, but that I had to overcome those difficulties. So that defines my perspective. So even though, like, for instance, the podcast. What's up, Cliff? How you doing? Good to see you. Even though my podcast, the subject matter of my podcast, that being Freedom Speaks podcast, is what it is about. We all know, if you all haven't heard, that it discusses the last lynchings that have occurred in each state. At the end of the day, I seek to bring things about the cases or the stories of the people that are involved that go far beyond the tragedy of the circumstances, but that we can learn something from it all. And I do find it interesting, and some people else find it interesting, the states where these occurred and why they occurred. So, and I'm not brooding or try to say, you know, this happened to you, and, you know, we have to be these people that are distanced from each other. You know, my hope is that it brings us closer together. So, and as I go along, and there might be, I mean, it doesn't have to stick to that specific topic. It could be broadened. But some people have expressed their desire to hear these stories, and some people just simply don't want to, you know, look into it. They just want to be presented with this information. Happens to be something that I was interested in. I have been specifically influenced or involved, or at least not involved, but I lived in two places where there were some very popular stories. The first one, which was in Utah, second one, which was in Marion, Indiana, which is not too far from where I was born. So, all of that to say, for the most part, the things that I talk about, the things that interest me, the things that I explore, have to do with some of the things that I've experienced in my lifetime as a child, growing up, my military experience, those kind of things. And it allows me to be able to desire to speak and make connection with people versus enemies. So even when I have problems, my desire is to have peace always. I err on the side of that. Now, I was a bouncer for a period of time, and Cliff Williams may know the bar that I'm talking about, which is a bar called Protocol. It was probably one of the most popular bars in Utah. And there were a lot of people there. When I say a lot of people, I'm talking about, we had the hip hop crowd, we had the rockers, we had the jazz people, because we had venues where all of those things occurred. So sometimes there would be some very different people. What's up, Dreaded? How you doing? Good to see you, man. as some very different people that would be at the bar and as a bouncer. And when I say bouncer, I wasn't one of those guys that was walking around, you know, huffing and puffing and knocking people out. If you can imagine me, I was probably one of the people that were more like the diplomatic type person. You know, can we reason what's going on? Sorry, you can't stay tonight. You're gonna have to go. Don't swing on any of my colleagues. Oh, you did that. I put you in a chokehold, and we move on. That kind of thing. So, all that to say is, I'm very diplomatic in many ways, but the spirit of defending myself is something that I was taught as a child and as a military person and as a person who, had to deal with different things. So don't take my kindness as, me being a fool or me being weak minded. So, all right. So I'm going to introduce to you guys, if some of you all haven't seen this, and I would imagine that probably dreaded. Maybe all of you guys have seen this before, but it's called Oh Yes. Oh Yay. So I think this is comes from when they say Oh Yay, Oh Yay. I don't know if this is the spelling, but this particular site has some things that are very cool about it. One, you can listen to the oral arguments, depending on how the case is. If there's record of it and they got a recording of it, then you can listen to it. So all of this stuff was out there, and I thought, I'm going to try to figure out this case, see what's going on. What does it mean? Because right now you hear people talking about how this is tragic and we have the king, making all of these rules, and then the evil six or whatever that are doing the king's bidding. And then you have other people who are saying, keep in mind, this ruling didn't specifically affect just Donald J. Trump. I mean, it affects all presidents and presidents to come, right? So it wasn't a ruling that was made specifically for Donald J. Trump. Obviously, he's going to have some benefit, or maybe um, some the opposite of benefit. Um, but I mean, it's a case that they came up with. So I just thought it was interesting. So we'll start off with how basically they present it, and it is with the facts of the case. And when they say the facts of the case, what brought it to be, and then what is the question that the court is going to answer. So I'll just read it. It says, former facts of the case. Former President Donald Trump was indicted in August 2023 on 4 counts arising from Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation into the January 6, 2021 attacks on the U.S. Capitol. Trump claimed that he cannot be prosecuted for his official acts as president, and that a former president cannot be prosecuted unless he has first been impeached by the House and convicted by the Senate. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan initially set Trump's trial for March 4th, 2024, but later vacated this date pending resolution of Trump's immunity claims. Judge Chutkan denied Trump's motion to dismiss on immunity grounds, and Smith asked the Supreme Court directly to expedite review and bypass a decision by the D.C. Circuit. The court declined, deferred instead to the D.C. Circuit's judgment. On February 6th, the D.C. Circuit upheld Chutkan's decision, and Trump requested a stay of the D.C. Circuit ruling. Ultimately, the Supreme Court decided to expedite the case. Now, some people were surprised that they actually did this, but there's been, I don't know how many times it's been, but you guys may know that the Supreme Court, this particular Supreme Court, as it's constructed now, has taken up certain cases and overturned or made decisions that are contrary to what would be considered longstanding law. So they're apparently one of those courts that, kind of take the reins of stirring things up, if you will. So the question at hand is, does a former president enjoy presidential immunity from criminal prosecution for conduct alleged to involve official acts during his tenure in office? And if so, to what extent? It's a reasonable question. And all things considered, as I think I understand it now, part of the question has been outlined by the courts in a couple of different ways for them to determine how this question is to be answered. So although it may seem that they've made this decision that is like so sweeping, which it may be very sweeping. I think that their approach is still to just kind of answer the question. And I think I kind of understand the dilemma is that presidents before Donald J. Trump, like Abraham Lincoln making the decision that he made with regards to freeing the slaves, Nixon, dropping the atomic bomb. There's been a number of different instances where presidents have acted without having to worry about whether or not they're going to be charged or not during the course of their duty, their official capacity, right? And we've had no problem. So kind of, I guess the question might be that other people are bringing up is, why do we need the Supreme Court to step in and make this decision? And who knows why? So I thought it'd be interesting to kind of take a look at just the kind of, like I said, the oral arguments for this. Let's just put it up. And again, just to give credit where credit is due, this is the site oyez.org. Let's see, Let's or Cliff, anybody, if you can put I think I've learned from other shows that I don't necessarily want you to jump out and go to the site. And if you do, more power to you. Maybe put it up in another tab. But, let the algorithm work to the way it needs to work for this particular show and stay, if you will. But so I'm going to let us listen to a little bit of this. Maybe comment if something pops out, or if you have a question about it, let me know, and we'll try to answer it. But I also kind of want to touch on the fact that there was 3 dissenting, 6 and 3. I think it was split 6 and 3, and more specifically along political lines. So if there were the democratically appointed judges opposed to this ruling, and then the Republican appointed judges were in favor of it. Justice Sotomayor specifically decided to, and I don't think this is so beyond reason or abnormality. What am I trying to say? I'm just saying it's not so abnormal that she wanted to give her dissenting opinion on the bench. Now, I don't know if she read it all in its entirety. Maybe that's why it took so long, but I don't know exactly how that went. But my understanding that she just didn't publish it, but she actually wanted to put it in the record on the bench. So it's kind of different than just saying I dissent. And she didn't dissent respectfully. They say I respectfully dissent. She just simply dissented. So let's just listen to a little bit, and I can fast forward if I need to, but we'll just give a little bit of a listen.
We will hear argument this morning in case 23-939, Trump versus United States. Mr. Sauer?
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court. Without presidential immunity from criminal prosecution, there can be no presidency as we know it. For 234 years of American history, no president was ever prosecuted for his official acts. The framers of our Constitution viewed an energetic executive as essential to securing liberty. If a president can be charged, put on trial, and imprisoned for his most controversial decisions as soon as he leaves office, that looming threat will distort the president's decision-making precisely when bold and fearless action is most needed. Every current president will face de facto blackmail and extortion by his political rivals while he is still in office. The implications of the court's decision here.
Oh, sorry. Let me see. The implications of the court's. That's another cool thing, is that this playback is specifically attached to where you see on the screen. I mean, I really do like this. In fact, Let's and I were talking, and we were talking about the Terry v. Ohio case, and there were some things about that I kind of knew, but I didn't know, and so I went back and I listened to the oral arguments of the case through Oyez. Oyez, however you say it. So anyway, I thought it was interesting. Where did I go? Okay.
The implications of the court's decision here extend far beyond the facts of this case. Could President George W. Bush have been sent to prison for obstructing an official proceeding or allegedly lying to Congress to induce war in Iraq? Could President Obama be charged with murder for killing U.S. citizens abroad by drone strike? Could President Biden someday be charged with unlawfully inducing immigrants to enter the country illegally for his border policies? The answer to all these—
My man, like, take a sip of water or clear your voice. He sounds like he's got that.
These questions is no. Prosecuting the president for his official acts is an innovation with no foothold in history or tradition and incompatible with our constitutional structure. The original meaning of the executive vesting clause, the framers' understanding and intent, an unbroken historical tradition spanning 200 years, and policy considerations rooted in the separation of powers all counsel against it. I welcome the court's questions.
Mr. Sauer, to your last point, could you be more precise as to the source of this immunity?
The source of the immunity is principally rooted in the executive vesting clause of Article 2, Section 1.
And how does that happen?
The source of it, Justice Thomas, I think is, as you described in your separate opinion in Civitofsky, for example, that the executive vesting clause does not include only executive powers laid out explicitly therein, but encompasses all the powers that were originally understood to be included therein. And Marbury against Madison itself provides strong evidence this kind of immunity, a broad principle of immunity that protects the president's official acts from scrutiny, direct sitting in judgment, so to speak, of the Article 3 courts. That matches the original understanding of the executive.
So how exactly would we determine what an official act is?
And so this is kind of what I think is one of the things that people are most alarmed by, I guess, is that they eventually rule, or they did rule, that official acts, that a president is immune from being prosecuted when they are participating in official acts. Now, again, my understanding, and I haven't quite gone through it, but that they kind of break it up into these categories, if you will. Some things are official acts, and some things are kind of like specifically not official acts, and then there may be a gray line, and they kind of have this standard by which they compare it to. I think that's probably fair. But the question again is, all of these other presidents did things and didn't necessarily have to worry about it. So why do we have to rule on these kind of things? So that's kind of what interests me, and is figuring out kind of the nuances of what it is that they've ruled, what it means that they've ruled. And I think that the court always tries to seem like they take care to, protect against all of these possibilities. But at the end of the day, I think this is one of the reasons why, if there's any other time that we should be more diligent to make sure that there is a objective record versus the one that is presented to us, now is the time, right? So anytime that I have the ability to kind of make a record that's separate from that which is presented to me, and freely do so, I think I'm going to be more willing to exercise that than not. And I think we should encourage other people to do the same. So
I point the court to two cases for that. Obviously, Fitzgerald against Nixon is the best guidance that the court gives, where the court adopted the outer perimeter test. And this court engaged in analysis there that's very instructive here, where it looked at the level of specificity at which the acts are described. In that case, a civil case. Here it would be the indictment.
Well, what if you have, let's say, the official act is appointing ambassadors, and the president appoints a particular individual to a country, but it's in exchange for a bribe. Somebody says, I'll give you $1 million if I'm made the ambassador to whatever. How do you analyze that?
That, I think, would fall under this court's discussion in Brewster, where the court held, with respect to legislative acts, that bribery is not an official act, which also matches the common law background. So the way that this court in Brewster kind of sliced at the joint was to say accepting the bribe and the agreement to sex the bribe are not official acts. That's
Yeah. Well, I tell you what I think is fascinating is, and this seems to fall under the category, and I think this is something that necessarily does not exist in our youth or younger people today, is he was asked a question, and in doing so, I don't think he had these questions. Maybe he prepared for these questions, but he was able to take something that he already knew and the ideology and theories behind what he knew and immediately apply to the question that he's answering. I think that's fascinating, that we'd be able to take information that we already have and apply it to kind of defend how we think. And he, to me, eloquently does so. I mean, I don't know which case he's referring to, but it seems like he knows what he's doing. Otherwise, these justices would have said, "That's bullshit. You don't know what you're talking about." So,
private conduct.
Okay, it's
subsequent
not-
appointment would be essentially an unrestrictable power of this court that Congress couldn't directly regulate.
It's not, accepting the bribe isn't an official act, but appointing an ambassador is certainly within the official responsibilities of the president. So how does your official acts or the official acts boundary come into play when it's going to be official, assuming that the president is innocent? But the whole question is whether he's going to be found innocent or guilty.
Again, I think Brewster and Johnson do address that, or very persuasively, at least, in a slightly different context. Brewster and Johnson say the indictment has to be expunged of all the immune official acts. So there has to be determination what's official, what's not official.
Well, you expunge the official. You say, okay, we're prosecuting you because you accepted $1 million. They're supposed to not say what it's for, because the what's for part is within the president's official duties?
There has to be, we would say, independent source of evidence for that. And keep in mind that this indictment charges what this court has described as unrestrictable powers of the president. So the logical premise of this indictment is that Congress, by passing vague and general criminal statutes, has purported to directly regulate the president's exercise of things like the exercise of the appointment and removal power, things like his ability to speak directly to the American public, core exercises of his authority under the Recommendations Clause to recommend to Congress, members of Congress, the measures he thinks necessary and expedient.
So now I don't know how many times Justice Sotomayor asks a few questions. I'm going to listen to, we're going to listen to just a little bit more of what it is that they say. And then I'm going to go to what President Biden said. So after he says expedient, where was I? Sorry if okay. I want to hear what she says. So let's see.
And that's a situation which, of course, could be alleged in virtually any indictment.
Counsel, it can be alleged, but it has to be proven. Malum in se is a concept long viewed as appropriate in law, that there's some things that are so fundamentally evil that they have to be protected against. Now, I think, and your answer below, I'm going to give you a chance to say, if you stay by it, if the president decides that his rival is a corrupt person and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him, is that within his official acts that for which he can get immunity?
It would depend on the hypothetical, but we can see that could well be an official act.
It could, and why? Because he's doing it for personal reasons. He's not doing it like President Obama is alleged to have done it, to protect the country from a terrorist. He's doing it for personal gain. And isn't that the nature of the allegations here? That he's not doing these acts in furtherance of an official responsibility. He's doing it for personal gain.
I agree with that characterization of the indictment.
Interesting. Well, so, I mean, like I said, this is 2 hours and 39 minutes long. I'm sure there's plenty of other questions that they go through. And I do find it interesting that at the end of the day, when judges are trying to make decisions on things, specifically with regards to the Supreme Court, And I think that's one interesting thing that I find is that there is not a whole lot of time for them to be able to just ask these questions. I think they have already gone through the cases and the cases that are associated with it, and they just have a few minutes to kind of like clear up some things. So we don't get the full picture of it. But I've heard oral arguments that are half the amount of time that this is. So clearly, this is something that they have kind of brooded over, if you will. But at the same time, this is something that they took. I don't know what it's called. Maybe if you guys know, if anybody knows, where they took it to expedite the process, but they didn't really expedite it. Kind of like still took its process, but they decided to take it on. So anyway, I think it's interesting. So the other thing I was trying to find. I like to kind of be able to look at both sides of things, and I was looking for what it was that Trump had to say about the ruling. I think he just said it's a huge win, which is in stark contrast to what Biden says. So let's just listen to a little bit of what Biden says. This we're 4 minutes into this. I think this is when they're setting things up. Looks kind of cool. I don't know what this is called, where they're at. It's not the Oval Office, but wherever they're. This is different than like the press room. Somewhere else. Maybe he's somewhere else. I don't know where this is. Anyway.
Good evening. The presidency is the most powerful office in the world. It's an office that not only tests your judgment, perhaps even more importantly, it's an office that can test your character. Because you not only face moments when you need the courage to exercise the full power of the presidency, you also face moments where you need the wisdom to respect the limits of the power of the office of the presidency. This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent, because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president.
Interesting. So, I mean, if you accept that that's what has occurred, then, you know, it is kind of shocking, if you will, that I guess in a kingship that he has nobody to answer to. I mean, what happens when the king gets sick? You know, there's some. I guess this is the kind of group that the Supreme Court is acting as. That, you know, if don't worry about doing any wrong, you're immune from doing any wrong, and if you are doing wrong, then we will let you know. But I mean, if the president is acting above the law, then that to me seems problematic. But again, I think that it's going to take some time, at least for me, to be able to kind of determine from what has been said. And I am very interested in reading all of Jackson, I think it is, who also dissented and kind of agreed with Sotomayor. But I know that in the past that some of the changes that have occurred in the law, specifically in the Supreme Court, have occurred through judges that dissented. Now, there may be a ruling where the majority agreed, but eventually the dissenting kind of ideology became the majority eventually. So it is important. Obviously, if it wasn't important for the people to dissent, or for the other judges to dissent, then they would not ever just, you know, make it known that what their dissent was. So I think it's important for us to look at that as well. So I think tonight, probably, it seems like it's going to be a long read because, let's see, where did I look at? Where did I see it? I saw, maybe it was on Oh Yes. Sorry, I'm going to go back to that real shortly. But the dissenting opinion, I mean, it's quite a lot of stuff there. I mean, so it's going to be a heavy read. I don't think that I'm on any level am I going to be able to be the person that's going to read all of that, maybe in different sections, but I mean, it's out there for us, but let's continue.
Not alone. This decision today has continued the court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation, from gutting voting rights and civil rights, to taking away a woman's right to choose, to today's decision that undermines the rule of law of this nation. Nearly 4 years ago, my predecessor sent a violent mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. We all saw it with our own eyes. We sat there and watched it happen that day. Attack on the police, the ransacking at the Capitol, a mob literally hunting down the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it's one of the darkest days in the history of America. Now the man who sent that mob to the U.S. Capitol is facing potential criminal conviction for what happened that day. And the American people deserve to have an answer in the courts before the upcoming election. The public has a right to know the answer about what happened on January 6th before they are asked to vote again this year. Now, because of today's decision, that is highly, highly unlikely. It's a terrible disservice to the people of this nation. So now the American people will have to do what the courts should have been willing to do, but will not. The American people have to render a judgment about Donald Trump's behavior. The American people must decide whether Donald Trump's assault on our democracy on January 6th.
That's so interesting. I mean, he's saying that now because of this ruling, they should have known what the legal ramifications of his actions were before the election day. But now that this has come out, it's not going to be able to happen until sometime later. And so now it's up to the American people. Well, that probably likely was the case anyway. But it's so interesting that it's not going to then therefore be a jury or some committee that makes these decisions that's going to rule, but it will be the American people that decide. Are we okay with the fact that, this occurred and therefore we reelect Donald Trump, or are we going to reelect Biden? Now, I've never really said this publicly or whatever, but I mean, in fact, I was just thinking as he was talking, I was like, I've never had to read teleprompters per se. I think I saw them when they went close up. Doesn't seem like he's reading. Maybe he's just so well. But this is not one of those instances where he seems like he's all flabbergasted and doesn't know how to speak or whatever. But he seems to be doing well with his intent to respond to this. Maybe he's just well rehearsed. But anyway.
Makes him unfit.
Oh, what I was going to say was, whether or not, and I say this at the end of most of my shows, whether you be left or right, all I care is that you meet me somewhere in the middle. And some people may say, like GS, for example, like if you are a fence sitter, you're neither for me or against me, and I'm not going to bend over backwards to do anything. But sometimes I think you need to be able to observe from a comfortable resolve where you can observe the entire situation from a heel, or maybe somewhere in the middle where you can look at both sides, which is how I try to do things, so that you can make the best decision. That's just the way that I do things. That's my approach that served me well most of my lifetime. So,
public office and the highest office in the land. The American people must decide if Trump's embrace of violence to preserve his power is acceptable. Perhaps most importantly, the American people must decide if they want to entrust the president once again, the presidency, to Donald Trump, now knowing he'll be even more emboldened to do whatever he pleases whenever he wants to do it. the outset of our nation, it was the character of George Washington, our first president, to define the presidency. He believed power was limited, not absolute. And that power always resides with the people, always. Now, over 200 years later, today's Supreme Court decision, once again, it'll depend on the character of the men and women who hold that presidency that are going to define the limits of the power of the presidency, because the law will no longer do it. I know I will respect the limits of the presidential powers I have for 3.5 years, but any president, including Donald Trump, will now be free to ignore the law. I concur with Justice Sotomayor's dissent today. Here's what she said. She said, in every use of official...
Dale Elliott says, can SCOTUS overrule their ruling? So I'll ponder that as soon as this is... I think this literally has... just see, he's gone there. So just about probably 2 more minutes. So
power.
Stand by.
The president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. End of quote. So should the American people dissent. I dissent. May God bless you all, and may God help preserve our democracy. Thank you. May God protect our troops.
Why do the best Democrats beat Trump?
Interesting. And like I said, I was looking for Trump's statement on what he thought about the case. In fact, I just recently started kind of looking at X or Twitter, and I'm sure all the tweets that he's put out before, he must have put out something out there about that. But so Dale Elliott says, excuse me, can SCOTUS overrule their ruling? I don't know what that process would look like. But it seems as though, I mean, where they call it overturning. I guess, there's been, Roe v. Wade, for example, being overturned. I don't know how soon they would be able to do that, but as it stands right now, I mean, the court is clearly Republican, right? So 6-3 as it stands right now. And I think progressively over time, some of the decisions that have been made or the way that things are ruled on are vastly politically motivated, it seems like. I don't know. Anyway, that would be changing their opinion. Yeah, like how do you... Thank you, Tack. Good to see you. Yeah, so I don't really know if I know how to answer that question, but it'd be something that, I think I'm going to reach out. This is somebody who I'm pretty certain is likely interested in it on some level, and probably knows a lot more than what I would be, and that would be I Am Free, Steve, or because, in fact, he and I have talked before, and he kind of gave me some insight into the types of things that it will be necessary in order to accomplish making the type of change with regards to body-worn camera footage in North Carolina. For those of you all who do not know, body-worn camera footage in North Carolina is not public records. I've talked about it in a number of different videos. You can find one. But currently what I'm trying to do is try to establish a trend, if you will, over problems, complications, complaints, those kind of things that exist, and whether or not the body-worn camera footage supports that complaint, and if and when the officers involved affect the record by muting or covering up or doing those kind of things, not recording at all. I think when it comes to the record, that officers should endeavor to preserve the record more often than affect it. And then when they affect it by muting and putting those things off, or not even making it public record, I totally understand that you need to protect those people who are involved, gruesome scenes, those kind of things. I totally get that. But at the end of the day, I think it should be far more easier in North Carolina for that record to be viewed objectively. All right, let's see. What is put up? Yes, thank you for putting that link up, Cliff. Appreciate it. All right, so we are, and I mentioned this before. Sure, some of my shows are probably going to be longer depending on the subject matter. I actually, did I put up, let me see, let me just see, make sure I didn't put it somewhere else. Well, I don't think that I have enough time to do it now, but I think it's an interesting exercise. Someone told me, I think you guys have probably heard, that you believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. Now, some of you, I'm sure all of you who are in the chat right now are probably aware of. I can't remember exactly what the incident it was, but we shot down. Well, there's two different ones. One is when that a Korean airline drifted over into Russian airspace, and the Russians shot it down. What we got today? Hey, Rats, good to see you. Hello. We were just talking about the case. We're listening to it on OES. If you've never heard it, then check it out. It's a cool site where you can listen to cases. Terry v. Ohio, for example. In this case, we're listening to Trump v. United States. Yesterday, they gave a ruling on his immunity, so we're just listening to that. So I mentioned living in Japan, and in Japan, there was a guy who was on that particular airplane, and he obviously was perished in that incident. But what I remember for that incident is that there was a friend of my mom, a friend of the family, who basically pointed out the differences between the reports that went out about it. Now, it affected me because for the entire 2 years that I was there in the school that I went to, the private school that I went to, did we have a desk that was in honor of the guy. His name was So Myung Chai. Now, I don't speak Korean, and I'm pretty sure I remember most of the names of the people that I met or went to school with in Japan, but I certainly never forgot the fact that we had this student that those guys knew that went to summer school with, or that stayed in the dormitory, because the school that I went to, a lot of them stayed in the dormitories because their parents would send them away to learn English. You know, we had classes in English and go to the school. Some of us, like my sister and I, and some of the other people that came from the base, traveled to get there. But those guys were mostly officers' kids. You know, we call them brats. But, you know, my mother made the sacrifice to send us to that school. But my point is that I was affected only by the fact that this guy, that this desk was empty and we didn't touch it, and we lit incense every, holiday or something like that. But I didn't really know exactly what happened. And if you looked at the stories that were reported, you couldn't really necessarily tell like what the true facts were. So believe half of what you see, or none of what you hear and half of what you see. So I think my point is that I listened to earlier. I got up to this morning and I heard, I think it was MSNBC, that it was what was going through my ear. That's when I first kind of got wind of the story. And then I was like, well, I wonder what the Fox people are saying. And I'm sure I'll probably listen to, a couple of the others. But on one side, you'll hear, oh, it's wonderful, and this is the case, and they're doing it this way, and they're objectively looking at the ruling, that how it's going to affect presidents to come, and blah, blah, blah. And other people are like, oh, this is tragic. The king is going to have nothing but power, and the people who are working for him, that being the Supreme Court, are now, both of them are in cohorts to rule America going forward. And some of that might be true on some level, but I don't think it's quite like that. And that's kind of the reason why I put it towards you guys to look it up and find for yourself. And I'm going to do the same thing. So due diligence. All right, party people. Well, I appreciate you guys coming here. If you haven't already, and people have already said, thank you, Rats, for putting that up there. Appreciate it. certainly give us a like, especially if you made it to this point. If you haven't already subscribed, consider subscribing. We're very close to what I would consider a milestone, which is 500 subscribers and 3,000 hours of public watch hours. Now, I have to do a number of different things in order for me to reach that goal, and I'm continuously doing the things that I need to do to make sure. Wait, it's over. I'm sorry. I don't have like a 5-hour stint in me, 2 hours, whatever. I think the longest show that I've had so far probably has been like maybe an hour and 40 minutes, maybe. Yeah, I mean, and I will certainly get better at it. I mean, this happened, within the last, 24, 48 hours or whatever. And I did do some kind of digging into what I was hearing. And it kind of interests me. And I don't think I asked any of you all, but what are your thoughts? If any of you have any thoughts you want to kind of share in the chat, then let me know. I mean, and maybe I have it completely wrong. No marathoning with Craig for sure. I'm gonna put that up. It's worthy of that smile, that emoji that you have there. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I feel like I have a healthy kind of approach to understanding. Obviously there are some things that we would be concerned about if we just had a quote unquote king in office. Our democracy is not set up that way. So are we moving closer towards that by having this ruling? I really truly don't think that it quite means that. So on some level, what some of the people are saying kind of raise the proper spidey senses, if you will. And then on the other side, the court has probably ruled along the ways that they need to. I think if you want to look at it, they're saying some more work needs to be done. So at the end of the day, I mean, it's just the very beginning of things, and I'm going to go through and see what I find in here, and who knows, I might completely reverse what it is I think. So anyway, but I do have another video coming out, like I said, between tonight and next week. It'll probably be like a little conglomeration, if you will, of some of the things that I experienced with this particular show and the version that it was previously, and how it will progress into what it has now become. So I appreciate all of you guys who have come and supported and continue to do so. If you know somebody who might appreciate my approach to the things that I say and do, including the podcast, Freedom Speaks podcast, which, as we know, is the subject matter of the last lynching which occurred in each state, those states that it applies to. I was going to say something and show something. One more thing. Don't let me think. Don't let me forget. Don't let me forget. Let me look at my notes real quick. One second. Yeah. That I told you guys last time that one of my favorite parts. I'm gonna try to see if I can find. Let me look real quick. I'm gonna look up something by Tyrant Terminator, because he says something fairly similar to each thing at the end that I kind of like, and he says it pretty consistently. Let's see.
Check this out. I'm going to show you how I afforded this car. Okay, you ready? All right,
The complaint is the first thing you got to do in the embryonic stages of I guarantee the judge is going to dismiss your case from not exhausting your remedies. So stop saying that, man. Stop saying about the complaint, because the complaint is the first thing you got to do in the embryonic stages of rights violations. You have to file a complaint, man. So stop saying that.
Stop saying that.
I ain't talking to my real TTA family members. I already know. Y'all know. We talking about the people that don't know, probably, which they probably do know and just want to say something. Trolls, for lack of a better word. Anyway, I think we should be good to go. How y'all feel about this one, man? Do y'all think we should keep auditing the city of Elgin just to make sure that it's in place? or that all the officers know, or do we think we should leave the city of Elgin alone? Y'all let me know in the comments section. But I appreciate everybody's been rocking with TTA from the beginning. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscription button. Don't want to miss, man. This was it, though. This was it. This was the big follow-up update that I have for you guys for the month of June that I've been talking about this entire month. We got a lot of other stuff coming up, man, throughout the summer, man. So y'all make sure y'all get ready to lock in for that. Getting ready to head out, too. I'm not going to tell y'all what state I'm coming to, but I'm definitely getting ready to pack it up and book it on out for a
Come to North Carolina.
couple weeks. So we can start back moving around. And again, the link to the original video about what you guys just watched today will be in the description, like I say, for a recap, so you guys can get a refresh. But I think that'll be about it. But until the next time, man, y'all make sure y'all stay tuned.
See, now I've been trying to, I think that's the second time I tried to do that, and he didn't say it. He normally says, like, is there anything else that nope, that's about it. He says it the same way. I love Tire Terminator too. But Rat says, let's see. She says, so if I understand, I'm at the tail end. They are viewing Trump as king without repercussions for January 6th. And then Dale says, Rats of the Moon, this is probably as close to an unbiased source you can find. It does not take Craig all day to present it. I didn't even see that. Thank you. Rats of the Moon. I do not know about that 100%, but it appears to be pretty close to that. All right. And then she says, then we would have to examine all presidents and their behavior because I've seen stuff in my entire lifetime that all of them could go to jail over. Yes. So, and that is a point that I did make. And I think actually you will find, I mean, that's kind of like what I was saying. I think you guys may agree. I was basically saying that there's a number of presidents that didn't have to worry about the actions that they took. They just did it, right? But they were doing it legally. They were doing it for the purpose of national defense and all those kind of things. But they didn't have to worry about going to jail over it. And we didn't have this quote unquote ruling that we now have. A lot of people are obviously attributing it to the fact that it has to do with Trump's case. But it isn't a ruling that is specifically designed to affect him per se. It's going to affect presidents going forward. So to your point, yeah, you would have to over the entire lifetime, you'd have to kind of analyze, Nixon and those kind of people, all the kind of things that we've seen happen, Bush, all those things. And I think, in fact, Justice Sotomayor mentions it and addresses that in her dissent. So I think I'm going to spend some time tonight going over the dissent, and then I'm going to go through and look at the case, at least the majority's statement. What do you call it? Majority decision? I don't know what you call it. Anyway, that there are no checks and balances. Yes, checks and balances is. I mean, I've always considered. I always thought that we had a democracy that was designed specifically. Our government was designed specifically to have checks and balances. But I've been hearing people say that they don't feel that really works, or that it's been proven not to work. That one arm operates without the other knowing. And those of you who've served in the military, I did. I also had to order supplies, for example, in the lab, and I know that there's a certain way that that government operates, and it's not always as efficient as it needs to be. And it seems like sometimes things are just happening blindly without people at the very, very, very top knowing exactly how it goes and how it trickles down and how the actual effect. And then when they're asked about these things, it's like, you paid how many millions of dollars for a spoon? That's just an extreme example, but yeah. Biden is the danger. Yeah, who knows? I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I would like to see, I honestly wish that there would be some other party or representative that would be able to have a strong enough challenge to both Trump and Biden that we could fall behind, but who knows? right now it's a, what do you say, the lesser of two evils. Is that the choice we have to make? And it seems as though that shouldn't be the case, but things are set up in a way where, sometimes it doesn't even seem like the person that's in office or the person that is representing us is who the people really want, right? Anyway, so more and more like the bananas variety. Cliff Williams, both of them think we are a democracy. We are a republic. Okay. All right. I'm saying democracy, but I think I don't know if I mean, I'm just going to concede to the fact that I'm not specifically knowledgeable of the actual difference between the two of what you're saying. But I will tell you one thing: between now and the next time that I come before this camera and speak, that I will know the difference. So if you want to challenge me and make sure that I hold myself to that standard, then come back again, Dale Elliott, and we'll see you next time. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. And I've always said this, I've been saying this, and I do mean it, but whether you're on the left side or the right side, as far as I'm concerned, I just wish that you meet me somewhere here in the middle. And that is a fact. I truly believe that the more that I'm able to talk with people like yourselves and consider some of the things that we talk about, the issues that face this community. And when I say this community, the community that are around 1A and the Second Amendment type things, all the rights that we have, specifically the ones where people are recording our government and our government officials during the course of their duties, and both sides of that coin. We all obviously have some agreements, disagreements, and we are more capable than not of expressing them. Sometimes it's not very pretty, and sometimes we seem more like a dysfunctional family. But I think on some level, if we really get down to the nitty-gritty, more of us are likely to have some thread of a desire for our nation to be united on standards and morals and principles that matter and that we can live by. So that's where I stand, and that's why I do some of the things that I do. So hopefully we see you next time. I appreciate you coming by. Mods, thank you so much for what you did in the chat, keeping it very clean for us. If there's anything that you guys wanted to talk about or you would like for me to talk about, please reach out. I do have an email address. It's faqthemadness@gmail.com. For those of you who have sent messages to me, you know that I will respond. I don't have a whole lot that are in there right now, so it's probably easy enough for me to do so. But you'll find that my heart is in the things that I talk about and the things that I bring up, specifically because it matters to me. I have kids, 3 to be exact, one being much younger than the other 2, and then I have also a grandson. So some of these things matter to me. And I think on a lot of levels, it's something that I've imparted to my kids. And you'd find them to be a lot like me and sometimes different than me. So anyway, but I didn't raise any robots. All right. Love you guys. I appreciate you being here. And we will see you next time. Peace. Before I go, I should do like I'll do this the next time. I'll have maybe like an outro, which I don't have. I have them on each one of my videos. I don't know why I didn't play it now, so that I can not look like I'm trying to click the show out, but I'll get better. I promise. Take care, everybody. Peace.